Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, taking a look at a 2024 NFL mock draft. We've obviously been in the 2023 NFL draft grind, but I think sometimes it's important to take a step back and take a look at some of the other quarterbacks that are coming up the pipeline, some of the other prospects that are coming up the pipeline, especially when you get into the discussion about should we take a quarterback in 2023 or wait and take a look at what is happening in 2024. So again, before we get into it, I just want to say thank you to you guys. If you are checking out a 2024 NFL mock draft, you like talking ball. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The support you guys have shown throughout draft season, throughout the college football season truly means a lot, and we really do appreciate it. Let's get into this mock. Let's start with the quarterbacks. And I should say, before we get into it, don't get mad at me about if your team is projected to pick high or low. I just kind of put this in randomly and then made some adjustments on what I thought these NFL teams would look like. But we have the Las Vegas Raiders, and if they don't take a quarterback in 2023, they'll be in a prime spot to get a very good one in 2023 or 2024. And let's start talking a little bit about this quarterback class. I think you have two of very similar to the discussion last year, where it's like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are the two top quarterbacks in 2023. In 2024, it's looking like it's going to be Caleb Williams and Drake Maye. Caleb Williams, obviously the Heisman Trophy winner. One of the more dominant quarterbacks we've seen in the last couple of years, was phenomenal as a true freshman at Oklahoma. Transfers to USC, has a very, very good year, and it's hard to see him slowing down. And then Drake Maye busts onto the scene, and both of these quarterbacks are extremely fun to watch. I think Drake Maye might be a little bit more pro ready, but I think Caleb Williams has a little bit more juice to him. But both these guys are able to extend plays outside the pocket. They have the arm talent to make any throw. And what's even more impressive, as second-year kids in college, both Drake Maye and Caleb Williams, they were both very composed and great processors. Like really putting the team on their back, making the right reads, and almost seemingly always making the right throws. To me, it really does seem like they're the clear two top quarterbacks in 2024. And then I have two other quarterbacks that I just want to take a note on. Quinn Ewers, and he obviously needs a lot of work from what you saw. And again, this is a guy who probably should be a going into his second college year. He obviously graduated early and enrolled in Ohio State, transfers to Texas. Not a great year for Texas. I think he was still playing banged up, because you look at how he was playing before he has that shoulder collarbone injury. Quinn Ewers was kind of carving up Alabama. He has all the arm talent in the world, and he's a guy that if he he's only going to need one really good season, and NFL teams are going to fall in love with him. He's obviously the number one recruit out of high school. So Quinn Ewers is a guy that if he plays a very, very good brand of football in 2023, he'll be talked about as one of those top quarterbacks in the class. And then J.J. McCarthy, who I get it, he didn't necessarily look phenomenal at times, has to work on that deep ball accuracy, but he also has what a lot of NFL teams want to see from that quarterback spot. You're seeing a lot more value on being able to play out of structure, being able to create outside the pocket. J.J. McCarthy has that. He obviously has the arm talent, and I expect him. You saw the last couple of games that he was playing for Michigan in 2022, really started to put it together, and so I think he's a guy that also could throw his hat in the ring, I should say, to be one of the top quarterbacks in 2024. Now, looking at some of the other prospects, Marvin Harrison Jr., he would be the wide receiver one this year. He's going to be the wide receiver one off the board in 2024, assuming that he stays healthy and just kind of continues the progress he's on. The body control, the size, the speed, he's a freak. And I think he's one of the better wide receivers we've seen come out of college, or at least prospect-wise. Jamar Chase probably coming to mind as well. Marvin Harrison Jr. is different, and I expect him to be that wide receiver one. And then offensive tackle number one, Joe Alt. There's two guys in this tackle class in 2024 that I'm taking a look at. Joe Alt's a guy, came into Notre Dame, 6'7", 280 pounds. He had a great frame. He has great athleticism. He just needed to put on the weight and kind of maintain that athleticism. He did that. Arguably one of the best tackles in college football last year. I expect him to be a top 10 pick in 2024. And then J.C. Latham. He was a guy that bona fide coming out of IMG, was the number one tackle in that 2021 class. He's played very good. And obviously the NFL likes to take a look at those recruiting rankings, because that really does have 24/7 and those other high school recruiting services look at how they project to not only college, but to the NFL. And J.C. Latham, the size, the length, the athleticism. He's another tackle that I wouldn't be surprised if J.C. Latham is the first tackle taken as well, just because of he pretty much has checked every single trait you want in a starting left tackle. Now, getting into the edge position, Jared Verse to the Atlanta Falcons. I had Jared Verse going to the Atlanta Falcons in almost every single one of my 2023 NFL mock drafts until he decides to return to Florida State. He was my edge 3, but he was nipping at the heels of Myles Murphy, and I wouldn't be surprised if I would have put him over Myles Murphy when the process was over. I think he's the best edge defender coming back to college football in 2023, and I would be very surprised again if he was not a top 10 pick. And it's scary to think how he's going to look another year at Florida State. And then, the most interesting conversation, or one of the more interesting prospects in 2024, is Brock Bowers. A lot of people like to mock Michael Mayer in top 15, top 20 range. I don't know if I see it. I see it with Brock Bowers. When you take a look at a difference maker from that tight end spot, and it's so weird because I have a group chat with a bunch of guys who like the NFL draft, and talking about Brock Bowers as an NFL prospect, there's not necessarily one thing that stands out, but we haven't seen a more dominant tight end in terms of blocking, in terms of running after the catch, in terms of body control, speed, size, athleticism. He gets the position. It almost looks like he's like a little Travis Kelce out there. He's not necessarily winning because he's way bigger and stronger than other players, but in terms of you watch him, he always gets open. He always catches the football, and he's an absolute dog after catching the football, to the point where George is giving him ends arounds. Just get the ball into Brock Bowers' hands, and I think that's what makes a tight end special enough to take in the top 10. And so I have Brock Bowers potentially as a top 10 prospect, and it's hard to see him slowing down after the first 2 years he had at Georgia. So we talked about J.C. Latham, Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama as well. He was the best cornerback coming into that 2021 class out of high school. He's got the length, athleticism. He's played very well. That's kind of what you're looking for, is when they're top recruits in high school, they have all those traits. Then can you put it on the field in college football? Kool-Aid McKinstry's done that. I expect him to be the number one cornerback in this class. But I do want to kind of talk about Denzel Burke. Looked phenomenal from Ohio State as a true freshman. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see Denzel Burke work his way up. Banged up in 2022, not necessarily the best film or play, but he's a guy that if he can get back to what he was doing as a true freshman at Ohio State, I would be not surprised if he's being talked about as a top 15 pick. And then Kalen King Jr. from Penn State. Very interesting prospect in the sense that I'm watching Joey Porter Jr. tape, and the other cornerback on the other side is standing out arguably more than Joey Porter Jr. Kalen King, not necessarily the highest recruit, but he is so good. And if he continues what he did in 2022, I expect him to be in the discussion for one of the best cornerbacks in that 2024 NFL draft class. Then Quinn Ewers, we talked about him. I kind of want to connect him and Xavier Worthy, because those are two guys that if you ask me who are some of the top 2024 prospects before this season started, Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy would be on that list. Quinn Ewers struggled a little bit. Xavier Worthy also struggled a little bit, but he has elite playmaking ability, elite ball tracking ability, and that speed to stretch the field vertically. If Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy can put it together and be that elite quarterback wide receiver duo that a lot of college football and NFL scout fans think they can do, I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys are being talked about as top 10 picks. They just need to put it together more on the field, because Xavier Worthy, as a true freshman, was probably the best true freshman wide receiver in the country, but definitely not so great of a season in 2022. I would like to see him put on a little bit more weight too, because again, he is very, very undersized, but has that elite skill, elite athleticism, movement skill, and speed to stretch the field. And then JT Tuimalau, I messed up that name. As a Michigan fan, I know him all too well. He's a guy that was another bona fide 5-star recruit coming into Ohio State. Just a playmaker. I mean, in terms of stopping the run, he's very good. He gets his hands on a lot of footballs. He's very good rushing the passer. I expect him to be kind of in the discussion of a top 15 pick. I haven't done his film study yet, but it doesn't take much from just watching football as a college football fan to know that he's got that juice in him. And then Olu Fashanu, who I think wouldn't have went back to Penn State if he had known how much hype he would have gotten. I mean, there was a lot of NFL scouts that said he was the best tackle in this 2023 class. Elite strength. Probably would have been one of the best tackles in this 2023 class. I expect him to be very, very solidified as a top tackle in the 2024 NFL draft class. But again, I think he's going up against some really good tackles in J.C. Latham and Joel. Mason Smith from LSU, he's another one of those really, really good 5 stars that has, I want to check his measurables, but super disappointing because I was really impressed with him when I saw it as a true freshman. And then tore his ACL celebrating against Florida State, but he's 6'5", he's 305 pounds, in a very similar trajectory as Bryan Bresee. Came in as one of the top recruits in that 2021 class, looks phenomenal as a true freshman, which is really rare when you have true freshmen on the line of scrimmage, matching up with other grown men and just kind of dominating them with physicality and athleticism. That was what Mason Smith looked like as a true freshman. Tears his ACL after looking really good for a quarter of football against Florida State. I expect him, if he recovers from that ACL and gets back to what he looked like as a true freshman and continues to build off what he did as a true freshman, he'll be in the discussion as a top 15 pick. And again, you look back at Bryan Bresee, very similar stories. Bryan Bresee never really got back to what he was looking like as a true freshman. If Mason Smith can do that, I expect him. And Bryan Bresee is still being talked about as a top 20 pick, maybe even a top 10 pick. Mason Smith for sure will be in that discussion. And then another interior defensive lineman who I thought should have probably came out in this year, Jazar Newton from Illinois, absolutely dominant. Arguably one of the best interior defensive linemen outside of Jalen Carter in the whole entire country. Probably, if you would have declared, would have been a day 2 pick. In an interview, he said, I want to be the best prospect in the 2024 class. If he can somehow improve from what he did in 2022, he will also be a guy that's being talked about as a top 20 pick because with the size, the strength, and athleticism combo that he has on the interior defense line, the ability to get behind the line of scrimmage and affect the passer, a lot of teams are going to want that. Javon Foster, another really good tackle that probably could have declared in the 2023 class from Missouri. Really, really strong dude. I think came back to kind of improve on the pass protection side of things because he's a road grader in the run game. Maybe wants to be a top 10 pick, but he probably would have been a day 2 pick for me as well. Talked about Xavier Worthy, talked about Denzel Burke, talked about J.J. McCarthy, Kalen King Jr. Here's another one, a prospect that I don't think, and maybe because I'm a Michigan guy, I kind of think he needs a little recognition. Zach Zinner, another one who decided to come back for that 2023 season, which I think you're seeing like a lot of NIL moves, like guys who are day 2, maybe early day 3 picks, deciding to come back. Zach Zinner's a dude who's played as a true freshman at Michigan, possesses elite power. When you look at why Michigan's been able to have so much success on the ground, Zach Zinner, in just his raw strength and explosive ability off the line of scrimmage to move bodies, work up to linebackers and pick those guys up, I think he's going to be a guy that we're talking about as probably the best interior offensive lineman in this class. And quite frankly, a guy that I think is criminally underrated. Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. JT and Jack Sawyer are going to be a really, really fun duo to watch. Jack Sawyer struggled to get on the field a little bit in 2022 because you have JT who is playing at such a high level. And then on the other side, you have Zach Harrison. They've done a phenomenal job recruiting that edge position. And so just getting big-time pass rush reps was kind of hard to come by, especially for a guy like Jack Sawyer who was surprised didn't necessarily play as much as I thought he should have, because when you look at him and Zach Harrison, I think he might be a better player than Zach Harrison, but they played Zach Harrison a lot more than Jack Sawyer, but he's a guy that I think with more playing time is going to start catching some eyes. Leonard Taylor from Miami, he's another dude that because Miami struggled so much, wasn't getting talked enough about. He's another one who has, similarly to Mason Smith, when he played as a true freshman, eye-popping power and athleticism. If he continues to build on what he's doing, he's got all the traits to be a first-round pick in 2024. Emeka Egbuka, a lot of people like to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., and rightfully so. Emeka Egbuka also is an absolute dog. And you look at the 2021 recruiting rankings, I believe he came in as a higher recruit than Marvin Harrison Jr. did. I believe a top 10 guy. Yeah, number 10 according to 24/7 Sports. Really, really athletic, really smooth with the ball in his hands. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., you're a little bit more enticed because of the elite speed, the body control, and the size. He kind of has the whole package. But Emeka Egbuka is absolutely electric in space. And so he's going to be a guy that a lot of NFL teams are taking a look on. And that's the 3rd or 4th Ohio State, I think 4th Ohio State guy You're looking at Ohio State in 2023. They got some really interesting prospects. Dallas Turner, again, one of those guys that was starting to catch a lot of eyes as a true freshman, but Will Anderson was getting all the attention. And then 2022, I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of a step by from Dallas Turner. Quite frankly, both Will Anderson and Dallas Turner didn't necessarily improve as prospects heading into 2022. Will Anderson, very, very hard to improve his draft stock off what he did in 2021. But a guy like Dallas Turner will be discussed as a first-round pick. He's kind of got all the juice. He's another one of those bona fide five-stars coming out of high school. And then Malachi Moore, another Bama kid that Brian Branch played what I think Malachi Moore is going to play more. And they had such a weird situation because Malachi Moore, I thought, was arguably a better player than Brian Branch heading into 2022. Hand up, I was wrong about that. Brian Branch, probably the best nickel defender, walk-in box safety. Malachi Moore is a guy that does similar things to Brian Branch, but when it comes to who's going to kind of play that role, they went with Brian Branch. I think Malachi Moore is going to come in and play that position more, and I think Malachi Moore is going to be a guy we're talking about similarly to what we were talking about with a guy like Brian Branch. And so I'm extremely excited to see him come in and kind of play that role that Brian Branch did for Alabama. And then Malik Neighbors. Again, Kayshon Boutte getting a lot of the excitement from that LSU wide receiver position. Malik Neighbors was their best wide receiver in 2022. And if Jaden Daniels continues to progress in that scheme and he's coming back for another year, no more Kayshon Boutte. I think Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels, again, two of those quarterbacks that have the potential to really improve their draft stock with that wide receiver quarterback connection. 27, the Miami Dolphins. TreVeyon Henderson, and this one hurts me because I as much as I love Blake Corum and I want him to be the running back one in this class, TreVeyon Henderson, as a true freshman, when you ask me coming into the season, who is the best running back in college football, I would answer Bijan Robinson, but I wouldn't say it's by a long shot. And TreVeyon Henderson and what he did as a true freshman, and I'll read off his stats of what he did as a true freshman. And this is another position that is really hard for guys to come in as a true freshman and dominate. TreVeyon Henderson did just that, and obviously struggled with injuries in 2022. Only played 6 games, but as a true freshman, 1,200 yards, averaging 6 yards a carry. Also caught 27 catches for 312 yards. He's kind of like what you're looking for in an all-purpose back. And similarly, how we talk about Bijan Robinson being an offensive playmaker, and that's why he should go in the top 20. I think TreVeyon Henderson, maybe a little bit less so, but he's definitely nipping at the heels of a Bijan Robinson in the sense of being an offensive playmaker and a guy that warrants a first-round pick from that running back position. And then Mario Williams, he was kind of my dark horse to be one of the best wide receivers, and he was one of the best wide receivers in 2022. Caleb Williams and him have played at Oklahoma. They both transferred to USC, and USC has such a loaded wide receiver room, but with Jordan Addison heading out, I think Caleb Williams and Mario Williams, and you look at those like Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, and then like Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors. I think you put Caleb Williams and Mario Williams as one of the more elite quarterback wide receiver duos in the country, and if they kind of continue what they're doing out in the West Coast, Mario Williams is another guy who's a little bit undersized, but just really good at the position. He's a really good separator, and quite frankly, really impressed me as a true freshman. I think he's going to be getting a lot of talk as well. And then Amarius Mims, another one of those top recruits in 2021 who was considered, actually hit the transfer portal before we headed into 2022 because he could not get reps in front of Broderick Jones at left tackle and Warren McClendon at right tackle. But the more Amarius Mims played, he's playing guard. And he was too good for Georgia not to play. He's probably going to play that left tackle position for Georgia next year. And he's a guy that, again, 6'7", 320 pounds, all the tools to be an elite left tackle. He's only going to need 1 year to show it because he's already showed it a little bit. He plays 1 year of really, really good football at that left tackle position for Georgia. He's he's going to be in that discussion for that offensive tackle one spot. Junior Colson, I had to work in some of my Michigan guys. I actually had Rod Moore in here as well. So if you guys are Michigan fans, Junior Colson, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is probably my linebacker one heading into 2023. Junior Colson's really, really good. And he's another one of those guys that he's played at a high level since a true freshman, was the heartbeat and soul of that Michigan team in 2022. Does everything you want in an NFL linebacker. Can stretch the field, can play between the tackles, make tackles out in space against running backs. I think you want to see a little bit more comfortability dropping back in coverage. But if he puts that together, again, from a terms of traits standpoint, Junior Colson is just an absolute ball hawk and has all those traits to be an elite linebacker at the next level. And then Nate Wiggins from Clemson. And this is a weird one because Clemson struggled so much in the secondary, but Nate Wiggins continued to come along as a second-year player. He's got great length. He's 6'2". I think he had to put on some weight, and I think he's in the process of doing that. But he's one of those cornerbacks that I gravitate to because he uses his hands extremely well, especially dropping back in zone coverage. He's a really good athlete, reading the quarterback and then making a play on the football. Nate Wiggins, I think ball skills need to get a little bit better, but he's got those traits, again, to be cornerback one. And when you're talking about 2024 prospects, so they got a whole nother year of football to play, a lot of it's traits. And what are the guys that have the traits to be first-round picks and then just need to put it on the field? I think Nate Wiggins, you could slot under, needs to play better football, who played better football towards the end of the year, but has all the traits to be a quarterback one at the next level. Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, I don't know why he decided to come back to school. This would be like Kansas City's done this a lot, like get some of those undervalued guys at positions that maybe teams aren't valuing as much. They did it with Creed Humphrey a couple of years ago. Cooper Beebe could be, I think he was probably knocking on the door of being a first-round pick in 2022 or in the 2023 draft, I should say. Cooper Beebe's got some game out of Kansas State, especially from the interior. He's extremely powerful. I expect him to be one of the better offensive linemen in the country this year, and then being talked about as a first-round pick in 2024. And then to round out, we got Troy Franklin coming off the board from Oregon. My brother absolutely loves Troy Franklin. And you look at this wide receiver group, Marvin Harrison kind of dominates. And I kind of want to list some of the wide receivers that I have on my radar. We already talked about Emeka Buka. Ja'Cory Brooks is a guy that you didn't see enough of him. And I wanted to lean more towards like, what have we already seen on the field? Troy Franklin was one of the better wide receivers in the country last year. And as he moves up, he was a former top 50 prospect going to Oregon. Him and Bo Nix are two guys that quarterback wide receiver duo that I think could really take over. And then you have a guy like Ajayi Hall, JoJo Earl, two guys that you just Bama kids who haven't really put it together yet. And that's such a disappointing Alabama group where they got Corey Brooks, Ajayi Hall, JoJo Earl, all guys who are top 50 wide receivers nationally. And just you didn't really see any development from that position. But guys like Troy Franklin, guys like Mario Williams, Emeka Buka, Marvin Harrison Jr., you've seen them play really, really well. And I expect those guys to continue playing really, really well and then be 2024 first-round NFL draft picks. This is where I want your guys' help. Again, let me know in the comment section what prospects I might need to add to my board. I already got my Excel sheet working for 2024, but it's nice and kind of fun, especially as a college football fan, to look at some of the best prospects coming back to school for another year. So again, let me know who I should take a look at, who I should add to my board. I appreciate the support you guys have shown. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.